Welcome back. You're watching WION The World. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Janna.
And I'm Eam Korsaro, and on the show today, Russian forces have begun military drills near Ukraine, a simulation of tactical nuclear weapons. These drills were announced by Vladimir Putin as response to what Moscow perceives as threats from the West amid increased involvement in the conflict. Ukraine, on the other hand, has said that its allies could shoot down Russian missiles from their own territory, and this is an appeal that comes as Ukraine struggles to keep up amid insufficient air defense systems. How will things pan out? That's something we'll discuss on the show today.
We have been tracking Ukraine's struggles ever since the war broke out. Along with that, also on the show right here on World DNA, over in the war in West Asia, the United Nations has suspended food distribution to Rafah due to lack of supplies. It has warned that humanitarian operations across the territory were on the brink of collapse. We are going to be tracking that closely. As always, let's get you started with the headlines.
Moscow begins drills involving tactical nuclear weapons in apparent warning to senior Western officials who'd spoken about possibility of deeper involvement in the Ukraine war.
Kiev calls on West to consider shooting down Russian missiles over Ukrainian territory to better protect its cities from Russian aerial barrage.
UN suspends food distribution in Rafah, cites lack of supplies and untenable security situation caused by Israel's expanding military operation.
Donald Trump's lawyers rest their defense without former president taking witness stand in his New York hush money criminal trial.
Nigeria's Zorak mining community holds funeral for around 40 killed by gunmen in latest violence to hit the region, already troubled by resource disputes and intercommunal strife.
India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar to travel to Tehran on Wednesday will attend official ceremony to pay condolences on the demise of Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi.
One dead, several injured after Singapore Airlines flight from London to Singapore encounters severe turbulence, dropped 6,000 feet in just 3 minutes.
The hire and fire approach at Chelsea continues. The Blues mutually part ways with manager Mauricio Pochettino after just 1 year in charge. The 52-year-old took Chelsea to 6th in the EPL after a poor start.
Russia, it released footage of its military equipment that will be involved in the military drills for tactical use of nuclear weapons.
And this comes just 2 weeks after Russia's President Vladimir Putin announced that the country will carry out drills to test the readiness of personnel and equipment of non-strategic nuclear weapons. The visuals on your screen have been released by Russia's Defense Ministry. The video shows various types of equipment involved in the first stage of non-strategic nuclear weapons drills in its southern military district, which borders close force to Ukraine. The ammo also includes the Iskander-E tactical ballistic missile system, which is designed to pinpoint and destroy high-value area targets in the tactical depth of enemy troops. The ballistic missile has a range of up to 500 kilometers.
Tactical nuclear weapons are small nuclear warheads and delivery systems intended for use on the battlefield or for a limited strike. They're designed to destroy enemy targets in a specific area without causing widespread radioactive fallout. Moscow has asserted that these drills are a response to the quote-unquote provocative statements and threats by certain Western officials on sending their troops into Ukraine.
US officials for years have been concerned about Russia's vast arsenal of tactical nuclear weapons, but efforts to bring them under control through diplomacy have failed amid a broader fraying of Cold War-era arms control pacts.
Now, of course, we are trying to understand the implications of this as well. For more on this, we're now being joined by John Ayres, Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation from Washington, D.C. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA.
Thank you very much for having me.
Sir, the drills were announced by Russia soon after Macron upheld the possibility of Western troops in Ukraine. David Cameron said that Ukraine is, in fact, entitled to use British missiles to target Russia. Would you say the West would perhaps rethink its strategy now?
I think certainly that is what the Russian leadership is hoping will happen. Russia has decided to use its nuclear weapons as instruments of blackmail and threat. And what they're trying to do is increase the perception that that there's a great danger of a nuclear war happening soon, which nobody wants. And using that as a way to leverage Western nations to limit their support to Ukraine.
Mr. Erath, Belarus conducted tactical nuclear drills just recently. It was just shortly after Russia announced that it would be conducting the drills that we've seen now that have started. But Belarus conducted those about 2 weeks ago. And reportedly in Kaliningrad, Russia already has its nuclear assets positioned. So if you see the way Russia is conducting its nuclear drills at the moment, which is right in front of Ukraine, Ukraine seems to be surrounded by Russian nuclear assets, which are there in Belarus as well. What are the chances of Russia actually using these tactical assets, nuclear assets, in Ukraine?
They are already using them every day as instruments of blackmail and threat, as I said. It's still very unlikely that they would use them in an explosive way as a way to attack Ukraine directly. There's very limited military utility in doing this. It's difficult to see what short-term military objectives would be achieved by such use of nuclear weapons at this point. And were Russia to do that, it would bring a great deal of condemnation from all over the world. Nobody wants a nuclear war to happen. And Russia's few friends that it has left would probably rethink that friendship.
All right. Well, Mr. Ayres, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
All right, we move further from Ukraine has urged the West to consider shooting down Russian missiles over Ukrainian territory to protect Ukrainian cities from Russian aerial strikes.
Now, making this appeal to the Western allies in Kyiv alongside his German counterpart who was on a visit to Ukraine, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba argued that the measure won't be escalatory in the ongoing conflict. He said no legal security or moral argument stands in the way of Ukraine's partners intercepting Russian missiles over the territory of Ukraine from their territory.
There is no legal security or moral argument that stands in the way of our partners shooting down Russian missiles over the territory of Ukraine from their territory.
German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock acknowledged the importance of strengthening Ukraine's air defense systems. She said delays in providing military support to Ukraine has harmed the West's security.
Every hesitation and every delay in supporting Ukraine costs the life of innocent people. and every hesitation in supporting Ukraine also jeopardizes our own security.
Meanwhile, heavy battles continue between Ukraine and Russian troops for control of the border town of Vovchansk in a northeastern Kharkiv region. Ukrainian military said it still controls about 60% of the town and its troops are fighting house to defend the town.
Moscow opened a new front in the northern part of Kharkiv region earlier this month, forcing Ukraine to send in reinforcements. Furthermore, Ukraine said thousands of its prisoners are seeking to join the military after lawmakers' decision to enable some categories of inmates to join the troops. Now, Ukraine is facing a shortage of critical ammunition and manpower on the battlefield, especially on the front lines. And Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Justice, Olena Wysotska, said more than 3,000 people have submitted applications to join the military.
Moving on, the situation in war-torn Gaza that continues to deteriorate in a major blow to hundreds of thousands of Gazans who rely on aid to survive.
Well, the United Nations has now announced that they have suspended food distribution in the southern Gaza city of Rafah due to lack of supplies and insecurity caused by Israel's expanding military operation. The decision by the aid agency comes due to closures and disruptions at the Rafah and Kerem Shalom crossings into Gaza. Along with closed and chaotic land crossings, problems also plagued the US military's floating pier, meant to provide alternative route for aid into Gaza. The United Nations has planned new routes now to transport aid from the pier.
On the diplomatic front, European countries including France, Belgium and Germany issued statements affirming their support for the International Criminal Court after its prosecutor sought arrest warrants for top Israeli and Hamas officials. Israel's longtime ally, the United States, has signaled support for possible ICC sanctions over Israel warrants. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has suggested he will work with lawmakers on the potential sanctions.
Also, for the first time, Blinken acknowledged that Israel might not be willing to embrace a normalization deal with Saudi Arabia if it means agreeing to clear progress towards a Palestinian state.
Meanwhile, reports are emerging that the Irish government is set to announce the recognition of Palestinian state today, a move strongly opposed by Israel.
Following Israel's crackdown on Qatar-based media outlet, the Israeli government has now seized the broadcasting equipment of the Associated Press in southern Israel. They accuse the news agency of violating a new media law by providing images to the Qatar-based media giant. Although hours after the confiscation, Israel's communications minister reversed the decision and ordered the equipment be returned to the media outlet. It is not yet clear when the equipment will be given back to the news agency.
On the battlefield, Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 5 people in Rafah. The situation in northern Gaza is worrisome. Israeli forces thrust deeper into Jabalia, striking a hospital and destroying residential areas with tank and air bombardments.
They have also cleared off a sprawling refugee camp built for displaced civilians 75 years ago. Israel says it returned to the camp to prevent the militant group from regrouping after they had claimed earlier to dismantle Hamas months ago. And in the West Bank, Israeli forces raided the city of Jenin, killing 7 Palestinians. According to Palestinian health authorities, the operation involved dozens of vehicles and it continued into the night. Over in the US, Donald Trump's defense lawyers have rested their hush money case without the ex-president taking the witness stand.
Now, this now moves the New York trial closer to the moment when the jury will begin deciding his fate. However, by testifying, Trump might have sought to personally convince a panel of 12 jurors and 6 alternates that his aim was to protect his family from embarrassment, not to bury a story about an alleged sexual encounter damaging to his political prospects. But criminal defendants typically do not testify in their own trials as it exposes them to probing questions from prosecutors. He would have been at the risk of perjury if he lied under oath. In his remarks to reporters after court wrapped for the day, Trump reiterated his stance of the case being a political witch hunt.
Remember, I'm gagged. I'm not allowed to say what I'd like to really say because you'd be very impressed. But I'm gagged. So why would I take the chance? But we do want to defend our Constitution, so at some point maybe I will take the chance. It's a very serious situation when a Republican nominee for president, the Republican nominee, somebody that won easily and quickly in record time, gets number one gagged and number two is before a Democrat-appointed judge, and you're playing with fire like this. It's very sad.
The attorneys on Tuesday returned to the courtroom to discuss how the judge will instruct jurors before deliberations, which is a sort of roadmap meant to help them apply the law to the evidence and testimony. Then what happens next? Well, the jury is scheduled to be off until next Tuesday, and that is when Judge Merchant said the defense and prosecution will present their closing arguments.
Now, closings, also known as summations, are the last opportunity for each side to go over the case and attempt to persuade the jury to acquit or convict. After that, Merchant said he will instruct jurors in the law for about an hour before sending them to deliberate on the verdict.
Trump is accused of covering up a $130,000 payment that bought the silence of adult star Stormy Daniels, who in the final weeks of the 2016 presidential election was sharing her story of a sexual encounter with Trump. Though the hush money payment itself is not illegal, Trump faces 34 counts of falsifying business records to hide his reimbursement to Cohen, who initially paid for the transaction. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office called 20 witnesses over 15 days of testimony before resting its case.
For more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report. Listen to this.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump's hush money trial has concluded its testimony phase with closing arguments and jury deliberation set to begin after Memorial Day weekend next Tuesday. Donald Trump did not testify despite hints that he might. The trial started on April 22nd with testimony by David Pecker, a tabloid publisher, and ended with Robert Costello, a lawyer for the defense. Other key witnesses included Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen, as well as Hope Hicks. Trump faces charges of falsifying business record to conceal a $130,000 hush money payment to Daniels, who alleges a 2006 sexual encounter. The former president, however, denies the encounter and the charges as well. If convicted, he could face prison or a probation. Ultimately, it will be up to the jury to decide, and we will find out possibly as early as next week. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World This Week.
It's been 2 weeks since chaos ensued in New Caledonia. A bill passed miles away in France provoked deadly protests in the region.
Now, President Emmanuel Macron is heading to the island today. New Caledonia, it's equivalent to just 3% of France's territory, home to the indigenous Kanak community. This is how the situation looks in the region at the moment, with burnt vehicles and debris on the streets.
The deadly riots erupted over constitutional amendment approved in France. It finalized it would change who is allowed to vote in New Caledonia's elections. Right now, only people who came to the island before 1998 are eligible to vote. Under the new constitutional amendment, those who have lived in New Caledonia for at least 10 years will get that right as well. The indigenous communities are scared that will dilute their political influence.
It's Macron, President Macron, and Dalman and Le Cornu, the government and the ministers, all the ministers, they bring back the war here in New Caledonia, the civil war here. Yes, and I can confirm we are back during the last civil war in 84 and 88.
Now, Paris has already deployed 1,500 reinforcements on ground. Hundreds more are expected to join them. 6 people have died as daily lives have been turned upside down. Businesses have been looted. There is restricted access to medicine and food in the area. The unrest has also disrupted lives of foreign nationals. The government says about 3,200 people are waiting to leave. Local reports suggest protesters have blocked the roads across the island and authorities have shut down the airport over security concerns.
Just earlier, an Australian military plane became the first aircraft to rescue its citizens from New Caledonia. China has stepped up its rhetoric days after Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te made the inauguration speech to assume the role of Taiwan's new leader.
Now, Beijing slammed Lai's inauguration speech as a confession of Taiwan independence and also warned that they will take countermeasures. China has branded Lai, who was sworn in on Monday, as a dangerous separatist. Beijing is making such statements after Lai in his speech said, "A glorious era of Taiwan's democracy has arrived." He also thanked the citizens for refusing to be swayed by external forces, for resolutely defending democracy.
Also earlier, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi called Taiwan's newly inaugurated President Lai Ching-te disgraceful. According to a statement published by the ministry, Wang Yi said that Taiwan separatists will be nailed to the pillar of shame in history, quote unquote. Earlier, Beijing had complained to the US over Secretary of State Anthony Blinken congratulating Taiwan on Lai's swearing in. Blinken said that he looked forward to Washington and Taipei maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. This comes as China remains stern in its stance that self-ruled Taiwan is a part of its territory.
They've also not ruled out the use of force to bring the island under its control, as it continues to remind the world that reunification is inevitable. One person was killed, 30 others reported injured when a Singapore Airlines Boeing 777 encountered severe turbulence on a flight from London.
And this is the Boeing aircraft which was then forced to make an emergency landing in Bangkok. Our next report gets you all the details. Take a look.
A 73-year-old British man was killed and injured passengers were stretchered off a Singapore Airlines flight from London on Tuesday after the plane fell into an air pocket before encountering turbulence, the airline and officials said. Forced to make an emergency landing in Bangkok, dozens were taken to hospital, including one crew member, according to a senior airport official. The tarmac became a makeshift emergency room to treat the injured. The senior airport official said the British man likely died due to a heart attack, while 7 people were critically injured with head injuries.
The plane landed at the airport and the medical team was sent to the scene. Many injuries occurred, so the airport had to issue an emergency plan. All our teams went to help and also found one man had died.
A passenger on board told Reuters the plane tilted upwards and began shaking. Then he said a dramatic drop saw people launched into baggage cabins overhead, their bodies denting and breaking the panels. A spokesperson for Flight Radar 24 said data analysis from the plane's journey shows the plane tilting upwards and returning to its cruising altitude over the space of a minute. The Boeing 777-300ER plane, with 211 passengers and 18 crew, was headed to Singapore, the airline said. Singapore Airlines, in a statement, offered its deepest condolences to the family of the deceased and apologised for the traumatic experience for passengers and crew. Turbulence-related airline accidents are the most common type, according to a 2021 study by the National Transportation Safety Board. Widely recognised as one of the world's leading airlines and a benchmark for much of the industry, Singapore Airlines has not had any major incidents in recent years. The airline said it is working with Thai authorities to provide all necessary assistance. Boeing said it was also ready to provide support.
And as always, time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. On the other side, Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar has arrived in Kyrgyzstan's capital. We will be tracking all the developments coming in on that front.
Also on the other side, 5 phases of India general elections 2024 are done. All eyes now on the 6th phase. What happens next? That's something we'll discuss on the other side.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Shock and panic in the Democratic Republic of Congo as the army foils a coup attempt and arrests 50 people, including 3 Americans. After Niger, newly elected Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko now calls for an end to French occupation and even criticizes the presence of the French military in the West African nation. And the kora, a Western African stringed instrument, makes a resounding return thanks to Gambian artist Sona Jorbate, Wild of Africa, at these times, only on WION.
Yoga, the age-old Indian practice of wellness.
Ayurveda, healing through diet, herbal remedies, and meditation.
2 timeless traditions.
2 priceless Indian gifts to the world.
From well-being to perfect health.
How can you incorporate yoga and Ayurveda in daily life? As the world gears up for International Yoga Day,
WION celebrates India's gift to mankind on this special series.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Haim and me, Shivan. Let's get you started with the headlines. Here's all that we have lined up for you on this side of the show.
Moscow begins drills involving tactical nuclear weapons in an apparent warning to senior Western officials who've spoken about the possibility of deeper involvement in the Ukraine war.
Kiev calls on the West to consider shooting down Russian missiles over Ukrainian territory to better protect Ukraine cities from Russian aerial barrages.
UN suspends food distribution in Rafah, cites lack of supplies and untenable security situation caused by Israel's expanding military operation.
Donald Trump's lawyers arrest their defense without former president taking the witness stand in his New York hush money criminal trial.
Nigeria's Zurak mining community holds funeral for around 40 killed by gunmen in latest violence to hit region already troubled by resource disputes and intercommunal strife.
India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar to travel to Tehran on Wednesday will attend official ceremony to pay condolences on the demise of Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi.
One dead and several injured after Singapore Airlines flight from London to Singapore encounters severe turbulence, drops 6,000 feet in just 3 minutes.
The hire and fire approach at Chelsea continues. The Blues mutually part ways with manager Mauricio Pochettino after just 1 year in charge. 52-year-old took Chelsea to 6th in the EPL after a poor start.
Now, Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar arrived in Kyrgyzstan's capital Bishkek to discuss Islamabad's concerns over the recent mob attack.
The visit comes as Pakistan has ramped up evacuations of its students from Bishkek after violent mobs of locals targeted foreign nationals last week, with over 800 pupils returned to the country so far.
After reaching Bishkek, Dar held a detailed meeting with his Kyrgyz counterpart. The two sides reaffirmed the long-standing friendly relations and their commitment to strengthen people-to-people contact between the two countries.
The foreign ministers also discussed the recent incidents of violence against foreigners, including Pakistanis in Kyrgyzstan. Dar thanked the government for swiftly restoring normalcy and ensuring the well-being of students. He hopes that those responsible for the violence will be held accountable.
अपनी तारीख में IMF का प्रोग्राम मुकम्मल करे और इंशाल्लाह उसी स्पिरिट के साथ और सॉवरेन कमिटमेंट को सामने रखते हुए हमने ये
Over in India, 5 phases of the Indian general election 2024 are done, and now all eyes are on the 6th phase that is set to take place on the 25th of May this week.
One city that has made the maximum political noise in the past few weeks is Indian national capital New Delhi. WION's special correspondent Johan Castell went out on the streets to gauge the mood of the capital. Take a look.
As an intense heat wave grips the capital of India, New Delhi, WION got out to check the election temperature. The battleground for 7 Lok Sabha seats is on the boil.
I think Modi is going to win by the looks of it.
I think this time it's going to be a little tough.
BJP is going to make hat-trick. This time it's Congress time.
BJP, due to very good work.
So Congress will win this election.
So I'm here with Kanika in Khan Market. Kanika, who do you think is going to win in the election this time around?
I think it's Modi. It's non-negotiable, according to me.
Last 2 elections, it was pretty much clear that people wanted to vote for Modi. He had a really huge following at that point in time, but this time there is not a very big issue. All the promises that this government made, they delivered, but it kind of did not make an impact on the people.
BJP is going to make hat-trick. For the last 10 years they are ruling the country, and now this time, so 24 to 29, they will win, and they are doing good work for the country.
From Connaught Place, we then moved to gauge the mood of Delhiites in the north. The food hotspot of the city, Chandni Chowk.
Actually, there are lots of the people who are thinking that BJP will come on with 400 seats. At least they will win at least 400. So they are campaigning or also that we will win 400 seats totally. So it's a misconception for them. I thought that Congress will win this election.
After 10 years, NDA working, I thought this time it's Congress time.
Over the past few weeks, Delhi has witnessed several political twists and turns, including Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's arrest in a liquor graft case on the 21st of March by the Enforcement Directorate. For now, Kejriwal, who claims to be innocent, is out on interim bail and is campaigning for the polls. His party did not win a single seat in the 2019 Lok Sabha elections. On the other hand, BJP swept all 7 seats and is confident to retain them all.
24 का ये चुनाव मजबूत भारत बनाने के लिए है.
All eyes are on the battle for Delhi in the 6th phase on 25th May.
All right, now we shift our focus to the growth debate in Europe versus the United States. Taylor Swift is in Europe, and that can only mean 2 things. Some much needed consumer spending and an overall boost to growth there.
And that's what we've seen in most of our concerts. Take a look at this next report to delve deeper into what if Europe grows faster than US, and that could perhaps happen this year. What would that mean? Take a look.
That sounds unlikely, even with Taylor's help. But that's exactly what ING economists are hinting at. Just look at the purchasing managers' indices. They're telling us that US growth has slipped below the Eurozone for the first time in a year. We will get fresh data this week to nudge that analysis further. ING's analysts reckon there might be something in it. Out in the States, ING's chief international economist, James Knightley, makes a compelling case for recent consumer strength to EBB away later in the year. But look at Europe. Inflation fell back, pays up, and households are starting to feel the love. Even in the UK, headline inflation is set to drop towards the 2% target this week. And now, look at household finances. US consumers have largely blown through all the savings they built up early on in the pandemic. European households have been far less impulsive. Then there's the jobs market. There are signs things are finally cooling down in the US. ING's Knightley points to the US quits rate. This is the proportion of workers voluntarily leaving their job for another. This gauge is now below pre-COVID levels, and there are hints that the payroll figures could look bleaker as the current quarter wears on. In Europe, the jobs market is proving surprisingly resilient. Admittedly, it depends on where you're looking, and of course, it's a lagging indicator. But this data surprised everyone, more than a third. Yes, a third of Italian service companies are saying a lack of staff is limiting their business. Before the pandemic, it was 5%. It is similar but less dramatic in Spain. Even in Germany, vacancy levels are well above what we had before COVID-19. All of the story is less good beneath the surface, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Still, this summer, there's a case for some long overdue optimism about Europe. And annual growth predictions, well, they can be misleading. They tell us as much about 2023 as they do 2024. Wait instead until we get the December quarter GDP later this year and compare it to the same point last year. they're still a long way off. But on the metric, Europe may yet end up steaming ahead of the US. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Russia's oil exports edged higher this week. The increase was driven by shipments from the Baltic and Arctic terminals, offsetting a decline from Pacific ports.
And this comes as Russia transitions away from export curbs and towards deeper production cuts expected next month. This shift aligns with Saudi Arabia, a key OPEC Plus member, who pushed for production cuts to stabilize the market. However, Russia initially resisted due to seasonal limitations in the first quarter.
Meanwhile, the first sanctioned Russian tanker recently completed its first post-listing voyage. Its success could pave the way for other sanctioned tankers to return to service. However, safety concerns surround Russia's oil exports, facilitated by a shadow fleet of tankers. These vessels, often operated by proxy companies to bypass sanctions, have been involved in over 50 accidents since the Ukraine invasion.
Now coming to Russia's oil exports, Asia, which is a key market, it saw a slight decline. Weekly export value rose slightly, but the 4-week average dipped. This could be due to lower prices despite increased export volumes. Europe has completely stopped importing Russian oil by sea, and pipeline losses to Poland and Germany further restrict their options. Turkey remains the sole short-haul market for Western port shipments. All right, on to all developments now from the world of technology. Omar Sultan Al Ulama, UAE's Minister for AI, announced that both the UAE as well as the United States will invest more in artificial intelligence, and this will be part of a strategic partnership. The United Arab Emirates, led by government-backed from the firm G42, is striving to become a global leader in AI. Tech giant Microsoft had recently announced a $1.5 billion investment in G42.
The UAE-US partnership has raised concerns regarding the Gulf countries' stand on Chinese companies. To put things into perspective, the Biden administration has been involved in a tug-of-war with China when it comes to advanced AI technology. UAE, however, has distanced itself from the US-China chip war. Al-Ulama said that the UAE is a neutral country and that it welcomes all countries in the world to do business in the UAE. Meanwhile, Bruno Le Maire, French finance minister, during his visit to Abu Dhabi, said that Paris was open to the UAE investing in its nuclear energy industry. Le Maire added that the two countries might soon sign a strategic partnership on artificial intelligence.
Istanbul's iconic red and white teams have undergone a makeover. Built over 100 years ago, Istanbul's tram system is loved by both locals and tourists. The original streetcars have now been replaced by battery-powered trams. The look and feel, however, remains the same. From wooden floors to reversible seats, the new electric tram stays faithful to the look of their predecessors.
Our tramway is one of the symbols of Istanbul. This is why we set out with the following motto: mixing nostalgia and technology, we carry Istanbul to the future. Therefore, we wanted both to preserve this historical, nostalgic atmosphere and to offer it to serve civilians by adapting it with technology.
Instead of rear-view mirrors, the all-new electric tram has two cameras on either side, giving drivers better visibility and enabling them to drive seated. So what will happen to the old trams? Well, Istanbul's mayoral office plans to put the old trams in a transport museum. However, the idea is still in the initial stage.
A robot that can cross-talk, tell stories and sing. University of Science and Technology of China have developed a humanoid named Gua, and it is capable of showing human-like facial expressions. The humanoid robot can also engage in dialogue and interaction with humans. It can also give personalized feedback and support to meet the user's emotional needs. The robot uses 30 motor drivers to move its facial muscles, allowing the robot to present authentic and natural expressions.
Alright, next up, let's take a look at what's making news in the world of sports, starting with five-time Premier League champions Chelsea, who have parted ways with manager Mauricio Pochettino with mutual consent. The 52-year-old was in charge of the Blues for only one season. He was under pressure after a poor start to the season, but a run of 5 successive wins towards the end ensured that they finished 6th. Pochettino took charge on the 1st of July and had signed a 2-year contract with the option of a further 12 months. Chelsea will now search for a successor and have expressed interest in manager Kieran McKenna.
Pep Guardiola has been named the manager of the year after guiding Manchester City to an unprecedented 4th successive Premier League title. The Spaniard saw off competition from Arsenal's Mikel Arteta, Aston Villa's Unai Emery and others. Guardiola has won the award 4 times since joining City in 2016.